Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sudhir, for the opportunity to let me speak at this design event. When I received a call from Sudhir that will I be able to speak at this design show, my first question was, are you sure? What would I tell the who's who of the world in the designs? And when Sudhir explained the idea, it's not only about the designs, but it's the interaction of the newer technologies, specifically AI for this year, that's helping and shaping this new industry. And that got me thinking this is a brilliant opportunity to share with you what I have been learning and practicing myself in personal lives. So thank you, Sudhir, once again. As you said, we are not here to teach anything, but you are here to learn from each other. So I'm going to try my best to share some of the learnings that I have done over the years with you, and hopefully you would help me to take the message to the outer world through your designs, through your creations, through your companies, that together we can make a difference to our beloved Earth. So let's get started with some of the details that you're probably aware of, and some details that, as Minty said, I'll cover up on the carbon credits. We hear about the word sustainability quite a lot. And for my entire discussion, this is probably the most important slide to understand and be aware of. Sustainability is not something that we are conscious about or think about only in one action, but it's a more holistic way for an intergenerational challenge. This was formally defined by one of the UN's committee, Bertland Commission report, back in 1987, which says that it's fulfilling the needs of the current generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. I think nobody has put it more brilliantly than this, what sustainability actually is. So this pushes you to think about everything that we do, whether it is a design, construction, deployment, or end of life of use of your products that we create. How are they going through their life cycle? And when we start thinking about this, sustainability takes a whole new meaning. It's not just about designing a product sustainably, manufacturing a product sustainably, but also its entire life cycle without compromising somebody next in line. Let's see, I have a couple of stories to share with you how this is actually used in practice today. We do experience climate change. The floods 2 days ago back in Gujarat, floods here in Pune, droughts, severe extreme conditions, sea level rise. These are all the climate change effects that we see, experience, and read about. But it is not just important to hear about them, but also participate in solving some of these challenges. But how do we solve it? It's important to first understand what are the core effects, right? Extreme heat, storm conditions, drought conditions or water scarcity, wildfires in some places like Canada, Australia. Canada, for example, last year had a wildfire. In 3 months, it has emitted more carbon than 5 years of emission in one small country in South Africa. That's how the bad problem is. So it's important to understand the scale of the problem. So these stressors are important factors in considering life cycle of the products and the designs that we do. And we'll touch upon how these are actually relatable. Before we do that, what if we don't do anything about this? This is the future. This is the future for you, for me, our future generations, and everybody around the world, not just for India. Around the world, this is the future. If we do not limit our carbon emissions by the end of the century, 2100, if the temperatures go beyond 1.5 degrees, then these are the scenarios that will play out. And therefore, the businesses must become sustainable. The underlying principle of any business is continuity. The going concern is of importance for every business. That's the whole definition of starting a business. And in that scenario, you have to make sure that your business is sustainable, not only for profitability, but for investors, employees, stakeholders, vendors, suppliers, partners, the government, the ecosystem, environment, and your future generations. So everybody is at stake if your business does not take care of the sustainability. But how do we do that? It's easier for anyone to say, make your business sustainable. But what are the concrete steps that you can take to become sustainable? And unfortunately, many businesses don't know about it. These are some of the guidelines which are extremely useful, and this is some of the culmination of the learnings with both Stanford and Harvard that I want to share with you. Is it's not just one action that will make you sustainable. It's a holistic approach, and these are some of the guidelines. First and foremost, understand what are the climate stressors that are going to impact your business. And when we say your business, it's not just your entity, your factory, your outlet, it's also your suppliers, vendors, and your customers. If your customers are stuck in a flood zone area, they are not able to reach to your showrooms. So how do you help them? How do you create solutions to understand the effect of climate change on your customers? And this story goes for everyone else also. So reduce the environmental impact of all your business operations. This is where you understand your own operations and try to reduce them. As simple as carrying a water bottle instead of using a plastic water bottle is also an impactful action that you can exercise in your personal capacity and your businesses. I know some of the businesses, specifically in Bangalore, they have started a practice of eliminating plastic water bottles completely from their offices. There are water filters installed. You can just pour the water from the jug in a glass and then enjoy the water. So that's a very good practice that saves lakhs of liters of water wastage and also electricity and transportation emissions. Adaptation strategy. Mitigation strategy, I'm going to talk about these two key terms in a minute. And then what are the additional technologies you can consider? And I'm here specifically to tell about the carbon credits. What do you mean by adaptation and mitigation? So it's important to understand there are two different things. Adaptation is basically preparing yourself for the physical manifestations of the climate change which have already happened. This is how we adapt to the climate change. We install air conditioners in our home is an adaptation measure that we have taken because of the rising heat in our environment. Whereas the mitigation is more important. What you do today to avoid the effects of climate change tomorrow. And this is where I request all of you, the brilliant minds of design world of India, to participate and start thinking about the mitigation approaches through your designs. How can the designs be made sustainable? How designs can be enhanced through the AI is what I'm going to share some pointers and stories with you now. These are some of the examples of what mitigation strategies are and what adaptation strategies are. That brings me to one of the key solution to mitigation strategy, which is a carbon credit. Now there are greenhouse gases, there are 7 out of them which are having a warming potential much higher than carbon dioxide. However, for the public at large to understand the effects of rising heats and temperature, it's commonly called and measured in terms of carbon dioxide. But when we say carbon emissions. Carbon itself is an element, it's different from carbon dioxide. But for the general public, the term that is used is carbon emissions. So I'm going to stick with this term carbon emissions. However, technically it's a carbon dioxide we are talking about. So when any project, any activity reduces 1,000 kilo, 1 ton of carbon emissions from the atmosphere, they are entitled to get a 1 carbon credit. So whenever you hear about carbon credit, it essentially represents 1 ton unit of carbon dioxide emissions either avoided or reduced. And when we say carbon dioxide, it is all the greenhouse gases. I'm glad that one of the next speakers on the list is from Ather, the electric mobility, which is primarily helping the environment to reduce and avoid the carbon emissions through their operations of their vehicles on the road. The carbon credits also represent the catalytic funding for these projects. Essentially, when you purchase carbon credit, it helps the projects to continue their operations of reduction of carbon emissions. It's also decarbonization, a finance mechanism to support these type of projects. Carbon credits help you to avoid, reduce, and remove the carbon emissions or impurities from the air. It also improves health of the people around it. How? Because the carbon emissions are not in isolation. They also represent the elements in our air that diminishes its air quality. There are particulate matters which also affect the health. There are millions of people, to be exact, 2.1 million people die because of poor air quality all around the world. There's no other cause of death. It's only poor air quality. So if we avoid these emissions, it also gives us more benefits in the society, such as health improvement of the people. Typical steps of getting carbon credits are registration of a project, measuring, monitoring, reporting, validation, and then issuing the carbon credits. There are many carbon registries. There are 2 prominently in India and 7 across the world, which we can approach to purchase and transact in the carbon credits. But when we talk about carbon credit as a mitigation opportunity, it's not the holy grail of all the solutions. Let's be clear about it. I'm here to request you to consider sustainability as a holistic approach. Consider your mitigation strategies, and within mitigation strategies, after you have reduced your emissions, if you have reduced residual emissions, then consider the carbon credits. Because carbon credits also have their own challenges in the market today. It's not a new concept. Carbon credits have been traded in the world since 2008. In India, CCTS, Carbon Credit Trading Scheme, has been approved by Parliament already. There have been 3 revisions so far since last 1.5 years, and you would soon see Carbon Credit Trading Scheme getting implemented just like our commodity trading in our share markets also. The challenges with carbon credits are the authenticity. Are they authentically removing the emissions from the market? Earlier speaker Mayuri spoke about you need to be authentic. Same thing applies for the carbon credit. They need to be authentic to remove the carbon emissions from the environment and proven effects on the economy. Transparency, additionality, they have to make additional efforts in the environment to reduce those emissions. So these are some of the characteristics which need to be taken care of. Otherwise, your mitigation strategy will be at risk. What are the possible solutions? Use the carbon credits, which are supported through innovative technologies such as AI and blockchain, so that you have a complete traceability and a trust and transparency with all your stakeholders. And we can also use some of the design changes. This is what excites me to talk to you today. Typical steps: measure, report, offset using your carbon credits, and report your status of the organization. And now this brings me to the last part of the conversation is, should we use design or should we use AI for sustainability? And my take is, why not do both? Right? Let's see some examples for the design interventions that we all can do. Whenever we talk about electric mobility or fancy cars, there's an imagery that gets created in our minds, like Model 3, Model X, Model Y in its electric version. But when you apply that design to in the context of India, where the roads are much smaller, population is much denser, and the road carrying capacity is very, very less as compared to the number of population and the people who travel. So we may not actually have a solution that is impactful in terms of driving Model 3 in Indian roads. It could be a much smaller vehicle that can carry more people, more economical way. Design of the buildings, design of the individual houses can integrate more energy sources which are sustainable, so that you can have the design impacting the sustainability. Rather than the owner of the house, the designer of the house decides and dictates the sustainability of that structure. Transportation is a futuristic example. Some of the trials have been going on. Instead of a long electric train, can we have pods which can be interconnected and they can move into the smaller sections of that country, which are hard to navigate for a longer vehicle. And they can be connected together, just like the bogies that we see today. So these are some of the design considerations which can be considered for your sustainability efforts. And for AI, it's a larger problem that I'm very interested in about. Why only solve smaller problems of product, but why not use the power of AI for the holistic way, right from city planning, transportation mechanisms, energy sources, buildings, architectures, people movement, vehicular movement, waste management, water management, ecosystem, and greenery. All of this is impossible to be solved by one design. It's impossible to be solved by one designer or a firm. But when you combine all these 3 elements, a brilliant designer with sustainability in mind and the AI power, we can have solutions that will impact on a larger scale at the city level, country level, and the world level. This is why I'm here to request all of you to give a consideration to your designs from sustainability and AI perspective and continue to march on your journey, I'm sure together we can make a difference. The climate change is not because of the animals, it's only because of the humans. We Homo sapiens, our anthropological activities have caused the climate change. So we need to be aware, conscious, sustainable, and most importantly, we need to be human again to not impact our environment any further. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you very much, Sudhir, once again for this opportunity.